Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to touch on a topic that's actually been on my mind for several years. I just always thought that it was something that would go away or that it wouldn't be the case, so I didn't make a video, but here it is a couple of years later, and this still seems to be the case. So the topic we're going to be looking at is about one basketball player who I think legitimately is probably one of the very best power forwards in basketball, but whose in particular rookie autos and rookie patch auto cards again and again seem to sell for prices that just don't make any sense. And the more that I look into it, the more that I think this is a consistent process of his cards being shilled. And that player is Jaren Jackson Jr. So for whatever reason, his rookie autos and rookie patch autos have consistently sold at prices that feel way out of whack with the rest of the market. We're talking prices that make no sense, double or triple, when compared to other players whose cards in general, in most contexts, are actually way more popular. If you look at a different case hit or a certain card numbered out of whatever, numbered out of 25 or whatever. But rookie patch autos, rookie autos, for whatever reason, for Jaren Jackson Jr. sometimes go double, triple what you would expect. So today in this video, we're going to break down what's going on here, look at some examples, and then explore this concept of shilling, how it impacts the market, and why it is that Jaren Jackson Jr. might be the most shilled basketball player in sports cards. Let's get into this. Now, before we start getting into the weird stuff, let me be clear here. I actually really like Jaren Jackson Jr. as a basketball player. He's one of the best power forwards in the NBA. He's an elite rim protector. He's a versatile defender. He has a solidly good offensive game. He's a solid all-star, even all-NBA type of talent. And actually, I would say from a basketball standpoint, I actually think he's underrated by mainstream basketball media and mainstream basketball analysts because he's not this flashy guy. He's not a big-time scorer, although he's a solid scorer. And so he doesn't have the biggest following in the media. He doesn't have the biggest following in the hobby, though I think he's great. Players like him, you might compare him to players like Evan Mobley, maybe Bam Adebayo. They tend to not get a ton of hobby love, even though they're recognized as really, really solid players. Cards that will go for higher values are usually the highlight guys, the high scorers, the wings, the guards, the shot creators, not these solid, steady defensive anchors who are just solidly good players. Generally, these are not the players that have a huge following in cards, for better or for worse. So, in theory, compared to everything else, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s cards shouldn't be premium price. They should be solid, but not premium. But these rookie autos are consistently at premium price levels, higher than players who are hyped up. Now, I actually have personal experience with this particular situation. At first, I thought it was a little bit of a fluke, but it's the situation that caused me to look a little closer at Jaren Jackson Jr.'s cards more consistently. A couple of years ago, I had a Jaren Jackson Jr. Rookie auto card that I had bought, and I had put it onto ComC, and I decided to put it up for auction. They listed it on eBay, as ComC does. They listed it on eBay, they put it up for sale. It went through its 7-day auction, and then the bids started coming in, and I was like, whoa, this is climbing way higher than I was expecting it to be. I was like, this is great. My card's going to sell for a lot. The auction ended. Nobody paid for it. I was like, oh, that's too bad. Well, that's okay. I'll just put this back up for auction again. So I put it up again a second time. The exact same thing happened. I looked at the comps on eBay. It showed both of these sales. They showed, like, as far as I could tell, if I didn't have any knowledge, if I wasn't the person trying to sell this card, I wouldn't realize these two cards, the exact same cards, the exact same card listed twice, both looked like they sold. Neither of them sold. The second time I did it, it didn't sell. Third time, happened again. No payment. And I was like, this is getting crazy. At this point, I was like, I had been trying to sell it, because on ComC, when you put a card up for auction, it takes a couple of weeks before it gets on there. So I had been trying to sell this card for, it's crazy how long I've been trying to sell this card for. First of all, it takes like 3 or 4 months for a card from ComC to get uploaded onto the platform in the first place. And then once it was on there, this is, they have some updates in their system now that, make it a little quicker if you were going to put something up for auction. But so I've been waiting for that. And then I put it up for auction, and I had to wait a couple of weeks before it went up for auction. And then it ran at 7 days, didn't pay it. So I had to put it back up for auction again. I had to wait another couple of weeks. It ran in 7 days. It didn't pay again. I had to put it up for auction again. And a couple of weeks later, it ran in 7 days. It wasn't paid for again. At this point, the entire NBA season had gone by. You know, I had sent in the cards at a time where I wanted the cards to generally get in right around the beginning of the NBA season. I tend to send cards into ComC about 4 months in advance of the NBA season quite often. So I had put it in at that time. And by the time all this had gone on, you know, the NBA season was halfway over. I was like, this is annoying. I'm just going to try to get rid of my cards at this point. So a fourth time, I went ahead and put it up for auction. And this time it did go through. But the final sale was about half of the price of what those other three were supposed to be. But at the same time, the sale that it finished at in that fourth sale was a lot more like, oh, that's closer to what I would have expected. But when I went to eBay comps and looked, like I saw that those first three sales actually made the final sale, the one that actually went through, it looked like the fluke. And I started going through and looking through other Jaren Jackson Jr. autos, rookie patch autos. And I started to note, like, this is really high overpriced. So I went in, I looked at what the bidding patterns were like, and there was some suspicious, you know, there's always like a zero, somebody with zero feedback bidding in the end there. And there always seemed to be something that pointed towards something a little bit suspicious. And I just kept looking and looking and looking. And I kept finding this again and again and again. Now, at that time, I was like, oh, okay, he's been shilled for a little bit. But then I have occasionally, over the past couple of years, gone in and checked back to see if this is still the case. And again, I keep finding things that make it seem like Jaren Jackson Jr.'s rookie auto cards are being shilled again and again for years. Now, it's funny because once I went to start making this video, I went to see if other people had noticed, and there was a Reddit thread less than a year ago, maybe 9 months ago, something like that, of somebody else who had noticed something similar. And it was funny reading through the comments. You know, it was just people basically trolling the person commenting it, being like, oh, he's a very good player, you just don't know basketball, all this kind of thing. But really, like, there was only a couple of people who down below was like, oh yeah, I've noticed that with Jaren Jackson Jr.'s cards, and a handful of people would also say things like, I've seen the same thing with Trae Young's rookie auto cards as well. I haven't looked into that specifically, but people were saying that sort of thing. The more that I looked into this, you know, I noticed what this Reddit poster was sharing, and it seemed to me like this was a long-term coordinated effort going on for years. There's just not real actual market logic behind this. Sometimes if there's enough shilling going on, they fooled a buyer, and there can be an auction that goes through where the card actually does sell for that high, but it's because that's what that buyer thinks the market price is, but it's been manipulated the whole way through. So some of these will look more clearly shilled, and some of them will probably be buyers who were fooled by the shill to buying, thinking this was an authentic value. And then there's something to be said, like, if people end up buying it at that price, does that become the authentic value at that point? I still think that's disingenuous, because it's based on lies at the heart of it, based on lies at the root of it. And you can't build an understanding of a market value when it's rooted in something that's a lie. So if you're ever going through, you know, eBay listings and you notice a pattern, random high-end auctions with bids way above market value, and then you check a week later and you see that same card, exactly the same card, not like a variation or whatever, that exact same card is relisted and selling again. And maybe if it happens in that second or third time, the final sale actually looks like it's half the price. That cheaper one might look like the outlier, but in actuality, that's probably the real card. So you got to be very careful when you're looking at comps. Not all comps are real. There are any space where there's an opportunity to make money, there's going to be disingenuous people who are trying to take advantage of that. So be careful. This is not a one-off type of thing. So oftentimes shillers will have multiple accounts, or maybe their friend will have an account or whatever. Oftentimes they'll be doing that because they themselves own another copy of that card, so they want to manipulate the comp to see that this is going to go higher. If somebody sees a bunch of this card at this particular sale, then they're about to go to a card show. They're like, oh, here's the comps. This is what I'm going to sell it for. So usually this is done to create a false sense of demand, so the next buyer will pay more. So I'm wondering, this doesn't just happen with Jaren Jackson Jr., of course. You know, like I mentioned before, a lot of people have suggested that maybe Trae Young is one of the most frequently shilled players out there for his autograph cards. So maybe that's true. There's other players, other cards. Sometimes it's not even a whole category of cards. It's just one individual card that somebody will really try to shill because they have it themselves, or maybe if it is a category of card, they have a lot of that particular category of card. I don't know if this is true or not, but when thinking about why Jaren Jackson Jr. specifically, I'm guessing that there is someone or someones out there who own a whole bunch of Jaren Jackson Jr. cards. So they have vested interest to want his cards to go up in value as high as possible. So they create a scheme, they create a plan for how to manufacture the value of this to kind of be propped up. And then they can go and sell their cards either on eBay, which they can probably get a better price than they would normally get because the comps are just full of shilled stuff, so nobody knows what the real value is. Or most people think that this is the real authentic value. Or they go to a card show and the same thing. So my guess is it's probably a coordinated effort by one person or a handful of people who happen to have a large inventory of Jaren Jackson Jr. rookie autos. I know eBay has tried to do a lot of things to try to keep shilled bids off, but it's not possible. It's not possible completely. It's hard to identify it sometimes. And in some ways, Jaren Jackson Jr. makes sense as somebody who could do this because there's almost like if his cards go above what they seem like they should be, there's reason to justify it. And you could see that in that Reddit thread. People were saying, he is a really good player. He's an amazing player, a defensive player of the year, So there's justification that you could probably convince yourself that this is a real bid, which is probably why a player like him would be chosen. If you tried to do the same thing with, I don't know, Jonte Porter or something like that, it's very obvious that nobody's going to want his cards, so it's going to be very clearly a shill. But with a player like this, his cards are low enough value that you can find them for a good deal if you want them. But he's a good enough player where it's easy to convince people that his card value is high and that he's underrated and that the market is just finding him to be as good as he truly is. So he's a good player that hits that point where you could find his cards for really, really cheap, but probably convince people that his cards should be very expensive. So it makes sense if there was a coordinated effort of a few people to kind of prop up this market, that he would be the kind of player where it would really work with. And the fact that this has been going on for years makes me think this is really intentional. In most cases, something that is shilled, it has a period of time where it's shilled. Somebody will come in, they'll want their own cards to go up in value so they can sell them. So they'll make this effort to do this dishonest, maybe illegal. I assume this is illegal. This should be illegal. It's extremely manipulation of the market. People have gotten arrested and gone to prison for long periods of time for doing this sort of thing with the stock market. In sports cards, it's like this lack of regulation space, which allows bad actors to be able to really do whatever they want to do and have no consequence at all. Which is really quite annoying. I've gone back and forth about whether I thought more regulation in the sports card market made sense or not. And my gut reaction is like it's probably not a good thing. But gosh, this just makes it so that this space is so ripe for being plucked by the corrupt. This is just one example of, I think, a long, sustained, intentional effort to manipulate the market for somebody's own personal gain. So what does this all mean? We're looking at one example, but the truth is shilling is part of the hobby, and it's always been part of the hobby, at least for the modern hobby, and it's something that every collector really needs to be aware of. It doesn't mean that this player isn't a great player. He absolutely is. It just means that the values, the comps, don't always reflect reality, and you have to be willing to do more deeper digging when you're trying to find cards. You have to be careful. When you see a player whose cards are consistently higher than they logically should, don't just take it at face value. You have to develop within yourself an understanding of what the value should be. Some things might be a little higher or a little lower than your expectation, but you have to have at least a basic understanding of what it should be. Then when you're going in and you're looking up comps of a player, look for certain patterns. If you think, you're like, wait a second, this is a little fishy, go in. You can see if there's several cards of the same card that has sold over the past couple of weeks. If there's suspicious bidding activity, the winning bidder or the just under the winning bidder has zero feedback or 1 or 2 feedback or something like that. There's some people who come on and have an eBay account and they are going to have 0 or 1 feedback, but not very often is that person coming on and the first card they're going to ever buy is a Jaren Jackson Jr. autograph card or something like that. Every once in a while it might happen. So it's not by itself automatically, but it's a red flag. Take a look, try to see that thing and see if this is consistent around a number of similar types of cards. Also, do different comparisons of, if this card seems out of whack, look at other players of, in that same card. What are their cards going for? It's at times it's even possible that the whole set, if it's a particular category, the whole set could be shilled. So even then you have to be a little bit careful. You have to use your logic. You have to try to think through what is the actual supply and demand of this card? Does this price make sense based on what I know about this card? And then look for these red flags. Another red flag would be if you see, 3 or 4 of the cards that like this higher price, and then one that's much lower, and then you look in that one that's much lower looks more authentic. Go and analyze each of those and see, is that lower one just the outlier that you can kind of push off to the side, or is that lower one the one that was actually the sale? Another that might be a sign of this is if a player's card suddenly goes up in value significantly, but there was nothing happening in the basketball world or the sports card world to kind of justify that spike. That particular card was probably shilled. I don't think we realize how common shilling is in the sports card world. I think that eBay has tried to do some things, but I think a lot of it's been a little bit more performative, I might say, than authentic. I think they have recognized it as a problem. They've recognized that a lot of people have recognized it as a problem, but I don't think they've really done that much to prevent it. So while I think Jaren Jackson Jr. might be the most shilled basketball player in the sports card market, at least in recent years, and again, I like him as a player, I'm not discrediting him, but this is bigger than him. Do be careful. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, drop a comment if you've seen other players getting suspiciously shilled. I'd be curious if you've noticed others. And of course, please do subscribe for more deep dives like this. I've been trying to get back into the YouTube video creation process again. You probably noticed I had a big break there for a while, but it really helps if I'm getting more audience following this. YouTube's algorithm is strange. Sometimes my videos have a period of time where they're getting a lot of watches, and it motivates me to keep doing this thing. And then at other times it feels like I am getting no watches for the amount of hours I put into the effort I put into this. So please do come back, hit that bell icon so you can check out these videos. I'm trying to just make good quality content and not the garbage, junky stuff. So hopefully all of my videos will be useful for you. So please do hit that icon button. I'm sure I'm not going to be uploading videos enough to make that annoy you. I know that I only press that icon button if it's somebody who doesn't upload that frequently, and I want to make sure to hit their videos. If somebody uploads every week, every day, then I don't usually hit the icon button, because I'm probably going to come across the algorithm's probably going to recommend them. Algorithm might not be recommending me. I'm not making these videos quite enough, so it might be helpful if you hit that icon button. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Peace.